everyone, I'm Oliver from Blendtuts.com, and this time we'll talk about tileable textures. A tileable texture is an image that is made in a specific way which allows us to repeat it over and over again to cover huge surfaces with small textures instead of using really big and heavy textures. They are made so the border of the image corresponds exactly with the opposite border, so we don't notice the seams when it's being repeated. In this quick video I made, you can see how a single texture repeated again and again across the surface works pretty nice. Of course, in final projects you don't want to do this probably. You maybe prefer to mix several tileable textures and let them show up in different places to avoid that repetition effect and add some little variations when you have the same texture hundreds of times in the same surface. Maybe we'll cover that in a future tutorial, but for now let's see how to use tileable textures. Textures in this tutorial are used by courtesy of Jimmy Livejord, a friend of mine who is running handpaintedtextures.com, a website where you can find a lot of cool textures and low poly assets for your video games and projects. So here I have these 5 planes, and in each one of them I'm going to use a different method to use the tiling of the textures. So you can see that in Blender there are a lot of ways to achieve the same effect. So let's get started by the first one. In this one we are going to use Ubese in order to get the tiling. Alright, so first we are going to apply a new material, which will be called like Tile Matte 01. Okay, let's go here, apply a new texture, get an image or movie, and I already have, let's put it into the UV mode, and I have already here selected a texture. You know that you can load texture by dragging it to the UV editor like this. Alright, so we have here the stone floor PNG. Let's delete the PNG because this is how the texture is being called into Blender, not the actual name file. Right, so here just pick the stone floor. There we have it. Right, now here in the material let's activate shadeless because I have no light in the scene and I don't want any lighting effect to be applied to these images in the render, because some of the methods that we are going to use are not being rendered into the viewport. We need to take a final render in order to see the effect. Alright, so I don't want lights to be interfering into that, because right now we only want to see the effect of the tiling, so we only need the diffuse channel. Alright, so let's put this into texture mode, and here into the display panel just activate here GLSL, and there we go. Hide this, and if you can see here, these are the UVs. We can load here a stone floor, and we have the texture occupying the whole UVs. But if we make the UVs the double, alright, I made them the double by typing 2, so the size is doubled. Enter to apply, and you can see that apart from this square, outside of it, it's duplicating the texture, right? So the UVs are repeating that part of the texture that is outside this little square, right? This is one of the methods that I use the most, but sometimes it's not useful to have the UVs outside this square, right? Overall, if you are going to export it to a render engine or something like that, so probably this is not the best option, but it's in fact very quick, and if you're going to use it inside Blender, it's one of the fastest one. Alright, then let's go to the second method, which is basically the same as this one, but is done internally, so it's probably easier for you to understand. And if it is a complex object, you don't need to have the UVs like 10 times or 100 times bigger. You can only work with them into this square, but internally the program Blender is duplicating or I mean multiplying the size of the UVs, but internally you won't see any effect visually. So let's apply the material 01. Let's make it single, and let's make this a little bigger, and instead of 01 this is gonna be 02. Right, let's go here, make this texture single also. This will be texture 02. Just this is some kind of something that I'm used to naming everything. So you probably see me naming everything, even if it's not necessarily needed into this tutorial, but it's good to have everything correctly named, so in every moment you see what you are selecting just by the name. Alright, so texture 02, so the changes that we make here doesn't affect this one, because otherwise it's using the same texture if we don't make it single for this material. So here what we are going to do is to, you can see that it's put here in the Ubese method, and we want here the size of 2 and 2, only in X and Y, because in Z is not being used here. Alright, but as you can see, here's the effect. But if we enter in the Ubese, it's exactly the same, it's into the square. Alright, this is because internally this is multiplying the times the size of the Ubese. Right, so if we put it on 0.5, for example, you can see there is the half of the texture. Alright, so just put it this way, so it's pretty nice. Now in the third method we're going to do something slightly different. Alright, just apply the first material, make it single again, and call it 03. Why I pick this material 01, because it's the one that is like pure, to say that, because the texture it's using and everything, it's not multiplied in size or whatever, so we are going to see the original material. It's the one that we are going to use in the rest of the cases. Even if in these ones we are going to do it slightly different also, because we are going to use nodes. Right, so here we go to the texture, and this time we need to make this single because it's texture 03, and in this one specifically we are going to also make this image stone floor 2, because we are going to double the size of the image, not of the texture itself but the image. Alright, so there are some they are terms that is probably a little difficult for you to understand if you are new to Blender, but this kind of data blocks, these are called data blocks, and into the texture 3 we have the stone floor, which is the texture that we loaded here. Alright, so if we don't make this single, the changes that we make into the options of this image will affect the rest of the materials that I use in this same image, even if the texture is different, because the texture is something that contains the image. Right, we can by nodes or whatever, we can make a lot of changes to this texture, but this is the image itself that we are loading to be included into this texture. Right, so I don't know if I'm explaining it all right, but I hope you understand it, and otherwise by using it a lot you will get it eventually, because you will find some problems probably, and it's not something bad. In fact, it's pretty useful because it allows you to use kind of different images for different things, and it's fine, but you need to understand it. There is a philosophy behind it. So let's go ahead and stop the babbling. And now, instead of the mapping that we changed before, which the mapping applies to the object itself, you remember that it changes the UV size and stuff. Instead of that, we are going to use these options here, image mapping. Alright, and here you have this option here, which is repeat. Alright, and I want it to repeat twice in each one of the axes, in X and Y. And as you can see here in the viewport, we are not seeing any difference at all. But if we render the image, here you can see that it's being tiled correctly, right? Which is what we want. What this does is to load the image, doubling the amount of times the texture is in the image. Alright, so it's something, it's like if you load another texture that is already tiled. Alright, So it's slightly different, but you can see that we get the same exact result. So depending on your project or what you feel more comfortable using, or depending on the object that you are texturing, whatever, you will probably decide between these techniques. And so now with these two guys, we are going to do basically the same as we did with this one and this one, of duplicating the size of the UVs and increasing the size of the texture. But we are doing this from the texture and the material nodes. Now I want to advise something, and is that probably you will see something strange, because I've been looking for it because I had the problem and I didn't know what happened. And is that looks like when using the texture and material nodes, there are some little issues with the color management that was implemented in the latest versions, and the textures appeared darker, brighter, and stuff like this. But we are going to focus on the tiling because that issues will be solved eventually. Alright, so let's ignore them for the sake of this tutorial. So let's select this material. Let's apply, actually here we are going to apply a new one because we are going to create it from zero. Alright, we activate the shadeless and we go here to activate the nodes. Now we go here to the node editor, and here we have this material which is going to be called Tile Matte 04. Alright, this is going to use the Tile Matte 04. Okay, and now we need a texture which is going to be input since from here, color, plugging into color, and it's black because we have no texture selected yet. So let's select the texture 01, which is the one that we used in this plane here, this first plane, and this is the original one with no modifications of scaling and whatever. So this is how it looks. Now this is the generated UVs, that's why it looks like a stretched and stuff. So what we need to do is to put here a geometry and use the UVs like this. You can see now that is projected actually like is expected. As you can see, the texture appears brighter than what actually is, and also in the render it will appear brighter. Alright, this is a little issue. It can be solved from the texture and stuff by changing the color management, but I don't want to enter into color management stuff in this tutorial because it's not the this tutorial focus. So let's gonna leave it like this for now, just for you to see that this can be also tiled from the nodes. So instead of letting it like this, what we are gonna do is to duplicate the size of the UVs as we did for this one. Alright, but we are gonna do it into a slightly different way. Let's apply a vector mapping node here, and here just scale it. So as you can see, the effect is exactly the same, even the texture is brighter. Just ignore that. Alright, so this is the fourth method. For this final one, we are going to use the texture nodes. So let's apply a new material. This is going to be this one. Let's make it single. Material 05 is the name. Let's go to the textures and just delete this texture because we are going to create it from scratch in the texture nodes. Right, so here just create a new texture which is called Tileable nodes, for example, doesn't matter, just a name. And here we're going here to the texture nodes and tileable nodes. Alright, that is what we want, and use nodes. Right, so here you can see what's happening, and what I don't see is what's happening here. Alright, I just pressed the dot in the numpad keyboard. Num keyboard. Well, I don't remember how it's called. in the numpad, I pressed the point because it focused the view in the selection. All right, so it's pretty cool. It also works here in the viewport. All right, if we select something and press point in the numpad, it will look at it, which is very fast for looking what we have selected. Alright, so let's go ahead, delete this one because we don't wanna I was going to say fucking checker, but we don't want a checker there. So let's apply here a texture and join it here, and this texture will be, for example, texture 1. Right, let's render to see what happens, and here you can see that it is the texture 1, which is the one from the first plane, but it's the original one. It's not modified by duplicating or increase size or whatever. So we are going to increase the size of it right here. As you can see, here is what I said before. The preview here is really dark. If you can see it, I don't know, probably in the recording it's a little bit darker so you can see it, but here is the texture, but it's very dark, right? That's a color management issue. So here just pick a converter or distort, sorry, scale, put it right here, and here in scale in X and Y we duplicate it, right? So when we go ahead and render it, you will see the tiling. So as you can see, again, ignoring the fact that this texture is brighter, you can see that we got the same exact effect of tiling and texture with 5 different methods, and I'm sure there is even more ways to do it. Alright, so as you can see, Blender is very flexible, and this is not only a little thing that we can do, but with a lot of things it's also very flexible and allows a lot of methods to be used to achieve the same effect. So tileable textures, as you can see, are pretty powerful, very used in video games and even movies and whatever you want to do. If you need to texture a big surface, this is the way to go. Alright, so I hope you find this tutorial useful, and probably in a future tutorial we are going to see how to actually texture a terrain, so you can see how to add some variation and several layers of texture and all that. Alright, so see you soon in the next tutorial, and happy blending!